Hello and welcome to Press TV News Analysis. I'm Kaveh Tafai. U.S. lawmakers' approval of a last-minute deal to avoid a so-called fiscal cliff. A deal that would avoid a recession for now, a temporary reprieve for a struggling U.S. economy. But when it came to cuts in defense and non-defense spending, simply postponed for 2 months. Well, in this news analysis, we will dissect this cliff, U.S.'s economy, and how at the heart of all of this should lie the American people, and whether they will be the ones who are going to pay the price once all the issues are resolved.
On this vote, the yeas are 257. The nays are 167. The motion is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
A face-saving compromise for U.S. politicians. In a last-ditch effort, American lawmakers approved a controversial Senate bill aimed at staving off the swinging cuts and soaring tax rates of the so-called fiscal cliff. 172 Democrats and 85 Republicans voted in favor of the bill. The late-night House vote took place less than 24 hours after the Senate passed the measure in the pre-dawn hours of New Year's Day. But the question many ask is what on earth the months-long dispute over the measure means for Americans.
This is activity to keep the mind of the public focused on irrelevant activities of the government. These problems could be solved overnight, but there's not the will to do that.
Mr. Akaka.
The agreement reached by the Senate would see tax rates rise for individuals earning more than $400,000 per year. The figure is higher than the $250,000 threshold originally demanded by President Barack Obama and his fellow Democrats.
Thanks to the votes of Democrats and Republicans in Congress, I will sign a law that raises taxes on the wealthiest 2% of Americans, while preventing a middle-class tax hike that could have sent the economy back into recession and obviously had a severe impact on families all across America.
All the same, it's not only affluent Americans who face tax rises. Under the new bill, taxes on 160 million Americans, many of them middle class or poor, will indeed rise by 2%. Supporters of the bill in both parties said it fell far short of a sweeping plan that combined tax changes and spending cuts to reduce federal deficits.
It does little to actually address the deficit situation. And this is now the bigger talk in Washington is how is Washington going to cut down on its growing debt? Of course, this latest compromise, only cuts the debt about $650 billion. If this fiscal cliff did happen, it would have cut the deficit by about $4.6 trillion. So there's a huge difference there.
America's deficit stood well above $1 trillion in 2012 for the fourth year in a row. The country's national debt is over $16 trillion now and is continuing to rise. The new legislation postpones for 2 months the deep federal spending cuts, a central worry of the fiscal cliff. Analysts warn that the delay could set up another fiscal cliff in late February.
Let's find out what our guests think about this deal. Let me introduce them. We have Eric Draitser, who joins us. He's the founder of StopImperialism.com from Washington. Roland Amora, he's an economist and political commentator. And from London, we have Max Keiser, a journalist and broadcaster, joining us. Gentlemen, welcome. Roland Amora, I'd like to start with you. Maybe you can explain this to us because, well, it seems like taxes have increased. The inheritance tax by 5% to 40%, capital taxes to rise, the payroll tax, holiday taxes for 160 million Americans to rise from 4.2% to 6.2%. So what was this thing that Obama was touting about that was a victory for the middle-class Americans?
Well, you know, look, his contention has been this, that incomes of $250,000 and above should be taxed at a higher rate, both for capital gains, dividends, and also for income. The compromise was reached at $400,000 or $450,000 per family income. Basically, yes, indeed, the payroll taxes will be up by 2 percentage points across the board. But the real tax cuts that stayed in place from the original tax cuts are from incomes below $400,000. So there is a shift in the tax cut curve based on that.
Max Keiser, lots of names have been thrown around about this deal. Reuters came out and said a dud on deficit front.